Hello and welcome to Ben and Curt Till It Hurts, the culture cast that this week is curation meets celebration.
Oh,
yeah.
I love that.
You know what? I'm a new man, Curtis. We're celebrating for so many reasons this week.
Many.
Is the thing. So many reasons. Reason number one, let's get it out of the way. The biggest one, the most important thing, the thing we all can't stop thinking about is that we have a snow day tomorrow. Right? That's what we're all so excited about. That's the other thing is I'm a daddy now.
You are a daddy.
I took a couple weeks off to watch my wife do the hard work of releasing a child from her womb. Yeah, so that'll be in the back of my mind. Everyone all the horrible stuff that you've heard me say and will hear me say in the future. Just remember that's being said by a dad now.
Yeah. Download those back catalog B and C till at H episodes because I'm on my end. I'm deleting them all.
They're getting scrubbed.
Ben's daughter's never gonna have to hear this.
Never to hear.
I wouldn't want to do that to anyone.
No.
So
no.
Get him.
She's gonna have to edit it though. Is the thing as we've already established
Yes.
within the lore of the podcast that's what's happening. So that's a celebration, right?
Yeah.
Right. What else are we celebrating? We're celebrating the music of 2017.
Yes.
Right.
Finally.
Yep. But actually, one other thing.
Yes.
In my opinion, and I haven't really talked about this with you, but in my opinion, the first episode 0 of Ben and Curt Till It Hurts, was our best of 2016 podcast that we did on the Black Gold Podcast Network. So in my opinion, we're celebrating our 1-year podcast anniversary.
We are about 1 month shy of our year-long podcast anniversary.
Yep.
What a time it's been.
What a year. We went from 2 weeks, bi-weekly to weekly.
Yep.
Right? We've covered so many topics.
Yeah.
Who can forget Texarcism Month?
Oh, God. Who could forget Tarantino?
Who can forget Tarantino? The opening. Not the opening. Resident Evil 4 was the opening.
But what really, from my experience, when you start a podcast, you have you can have a million ideas and little nuggets of what you think a good show will be, but nothing can prepare you except doing it and seeing how it naturally develops. And the Tarantino thing was you and I had done our top 10 albums of 2016. That was before it was Ben and Curt Till It Hurts. And then Resident Evil 4 was a safe first thing because we're both knowledgeable about it and we both love it. And then it just really came into its own on the Tarantino one. So that was just a very special, that's in my Hall of Fame podcast moments.
Yeah.
So what I should have brought some bubbles. What a what a celebratory episode.
Yeah, I'm standing up. The blood's flowing. I'm celebrating new horizons.
This is
I see farther than I could before.
I was going to say, how's the studio look from that
It's
high
interesting,
up? You're a pretty
Curtis.
tall guy.
Yeah, it's interesting. See, what used to be my eye line was right with the To Our Friends Big Tokyo Power Rangers Balkan Skull poster. Now my eye line is right at Tony Atlas WWE Hall of Fame. So if I seem intimidated over the course of this podcast,
I think there is only up from there. Like having Tony Atlas be looking over our shoulder is going to bring us so much further than Balkan Skull, who are also cool guys. But I mean,
yeah,
no disrespect to Balkan Skull.
Seriously, no disrespect. You guys are cool.
I know you're out there, Balkan Skull. I know you're listening. All right,
you're listening with Obama and and Trump. You're all listening together,
and we hear you. We hear where you're coming from.
We're getting the emails. Don't worry.
We get the tweets. Okay.
All right. How are we going to get into this?
So I would like to start out by saying that not only is the 1 year anniversary of our podcast where we talked about the albums of 2016. This is my 3rd year in a row of doing a top whatever albums. And each year has gotten a little bit more intense. Like the 2015 was the first year I did it, and it was like December 27th, and I was like, oh, I should do this because I'm bored on a holiday. So I just went over to my CD shelf and I just pulled the 5 CDs that I had bought that year that I knew had come out that year. So it started with those humble beginnings.
The seed was planted.
Literally zero research going into it. And then last year was a big step but I really only listened to about 30 albums throughout the course of the year, and then kind of, picked my 10 favorite. This year, I was looking at my document that I kept track of them, and I think I mentioned this at one point, but I have listened to over 100 new albums from this year.
It's a crazy list. You sent that list to me.
Yeah. And it's I've even added to it since then, and so it was super fulfilling, because I feel like, obviously my list is going to be biased because I love music and I have my own tastes, but I feel that I've expanded my horizons the most to try to encompass, as many genres as I can this year. I also started this is the only time I've also ever done it for a year straight, like right after we stopped last year, I started this year's list. And so it felt good. It just was like, I really worked on this. And I started my albums of 2018 list the other day, and I was like, oh, here we go. So far I have two albums on it. Lil Wayne holding it down.
You can always trust Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne showed up on a song. That's what it is. No spoilers, but we're going to talk about this later. Lil Wayne shows up on Flower Boy. Yeah. The Tyler, the Creator, with like one of the choicest cuts on that album. Lil Wayne at his peak.
Exactly. It was one of those ones where, we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it. We'll get to that.
How should we start this? Do you want to go back and forth? Do you want to each read our list? We should, maybe we should have talked about this before we started.
Yeah, maybe, whatever. We're feeling good. We're celebrating. We're not talking about things anymore.
Yeah.
Let's plan this whole thing out. Let's start with you have a couple honorable mentions.
Yes, I do.
I have no honorable mentions, but one disappointing album that I felt disappointed by that we both have some experience with might be interesting to talk about, because it was one of the albums of the year. It was another one of those situations where it was one of my most anticipated albums of the year, and then it ended up just doing nothing for me.
Yeah.
So we can do that, and then let's go back and forth, starting with you, I guess.
Sure.
All right.
I'm great with that.
All right.
So honorable mentions. Earlier in July, I think it was, when we did our halfway point, I had mentioned an album called Passion Fruit Falls by Brother Minor, and that artist is on an indie label called Inner Ocean Records. They're a Canadian label, and they kind of specialize in lo-fi instrumental hip-hop. And so he was what got me into checking out that label and seeing what else that label has to offer. And that led me to a path, like Spotify has playlists of like Inner Ocean Records, lo-fi hip-hop and stuff. And there are like 4 or 5 artists that are on that label that were just write great instrumental hip-hop that I have a hard time putting those like in my list, because I don't want to say it doesn't feel complete, because an album doesn't need lyrics, but I couldn't safely put any of them where there were so many. So go on Spotify and check out Inner Ocean Records. They have some great lo-fi hip-hop. That's like my number one, like getting stuff done around the house and don't want to get distracted. I just love some fuzzy hip-hop beats that just kind of help you plug along with the dishes or while I'm editing a podcast or something. And the other one was also instrumental hip-hop. I had a really cool experience a couple months ago. There is a producer from Maine named Mike B. And
he made some of Spose's stuff.
Yeah, he's on some Spose tapes. He lives up in the Waterville area,
as Spose will tell you.
Yeah. So I saw that he had released a beat tape. He made like 50 cassette tapes of his newest project. I don't know if I thought that this would work. I just did it on a whim on my lunch break one day. I knew I had to go to Waterville, so I just like messaged him on Facebook, and I was like, hey, I'm going to be in Waterville tonight. Can I meet you to buy your tape? Because I didn't want to have to I figured if I was going to be in Waterville and he was cool with it, that would be way easier than paying for shipping and waiting and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and he was like totally cool about it. He was like, yeah. He's like, I'll meet you at 7. And I was like, 6. So I literally met up with this dude, Mike B, at the Waterville Bull Moose, and we outside of the Bull Moose exchanged physical cash for his cassette tape. And I asked him to sign it for me, it was kind of funny, because I think he was just like, okay. Like didn't expect me to do that. And I, coming from somebody who like creates something, when someone asks you to sign something, you know you're not super famous, but like it feels good, you know, when people want to give you that credit or like they, you know, it's just, it feels nice. So I like to do that when I buy something from a local artist, you know, just, it's cool.
Yeah.
So shout out to, I think it's called the Sound of Listening or the Art of Listening. It's up on that cassette shelf right there.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out to Mike B. If you guys want to check that out, he has since put it online so you can listen to it. I don't know if he has any physical tapes left, but I highly recommend you check that out.
Cool. Oh, nice.
You have
so the artist Father John Misty came out with a new album this year called Pure Comedy. His first one was Fear Fun, I think. This is the ex Fleet Foxes drummer, Josh Tillman, also known as Jay Tillman, also known as currently Father John Misty in his current incarnation. Came out with Fear Fun a few years ago, and then he came out with, in my opinion, his masterpiece, whose title I can't remember right now, but it's a big old love album. It's called I Love You, Honey Bear. Okay. That's what it is. It was one of my favorite albums of the year that it came out. And his new one, of course, as his earlier two were two of my favorites. I was highly anticipating this, and then it came out, and other than the song, I think Total Comedy Forever or something, the one that starts with the like betting Taylor Swift every night inside the Oculus Rift, the line that was clearly designed to like get fucking a million think pieces written about it to get tons of eyes on the album. Other than that song, nothing did anything for me. I think that his lyrics are better than they've ever been, but it's at the expense of his songwriting, and I was quite disappointed by it. What was your experience with this album?
I had listened to a review of it by Anthony Fantano on the Needle Drop channel, and he spoke very, very highly of it. And I had put it on my list to check out, and I just never got around to it because I of all like musical genres, a lot of times singer-songwriters are ones that it just doesn't tend to do a lot for me. So it kind of got put on the back burner. And then a week or so ago, the Needle Drop put up their top 50 albums of 2017, and Pure Comedy was the album of the year for the Needle Drop. So at that point, I was like, I really should listen to that. So I was at the record store, and they happened to have a used copy on CD. So I was like, oh, perfect. I picked it up, and I was also let down, but I also didn't have any like expectations for it. I've never listened to Father John Misty or even Fleet Foxes. So I was just like, this was the album of the year. Like it wasn't even bad. It just didn't do anything for me, which is, you know, what I was afraid of a singer-songwriter thing anyway.
You should try some of his other stuff or some of their other stuff. I think they are technically a band.
The best thing about like the end of the year is that for like 4 to 5-ish months, there's not enough new music to keep me occupied. So I'm like, oh my God, I just get to listen to old shit for a couple months. Like, I have time. I can listen to NWA again. And, so that was I was a little let down by it. I don't know. I didn't expect anything, but where it was like, you know, the album of the year for a channel that I love so much.
Yeah, that's making me think maybe I should return to it, because Fantano's got pretty good opinions, right?
I like his opinions most of the time.
I like listening to those opinions and following them by their every word.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a grower. Maybe I just have to return to it and let it sink in a little bit more. But as it sat, the couple times that I listened to it, I was tremendously let down.
You know, who has the time, though? We're in 2018. We're on the last corner.
I've already forgotten about 2017. Done with it. All I know is this document I sent myself with all these words of albums on it. I don't even know what all this shit means. I'm just going to read it.
In a world where we have world leaders fighting over who has the bigger button on their desk.
Dude, all right, can we talk about that? That was a weird moment for me.
For like 5 minutes.
That was a weird moment for me, okay?
Yeah.
Because I saw that. The fucking New York Times saw fit to send me that as a breaking news headline.
Yeah.
And my immediate thought was, that's pretty funny. Like, yeah, that's a pretty good joke. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm giving Donald Trump too much credit. Maybe I've got some weird Stockholm syndrome or something, but like, I'm finally kind of seeing what other people see in Donald Trump, which is that he's a funny asshole. He's funny asshole president. So it's too bad he's president at this time in history where like the world stands on the brink of nuclear annihilation.
Yeah.
But if he was, there was a comedian on a Netflix special said something about that, or it's like let him, and any other time in history, let him have a chance. Because like right now, there's too much shit going on. He's not the right president for right now. But any other time, he seems like he seems like a decent guy. I don't know. Let him have a ride. Who cares?
Things are a little. We need another peacetime president, for a little bit. And then...
Well, it would be great to have some peacetime for one thing, for the first time in the last 70 years.
2017 was the year I was so invested in politics in 2017, and it was the worst year of my life. And I don't know if that was a coincidence, but one of my New Year's resolutions is to stop going on the politics subreddit every day.
Oh my god, it's that fucking place,
dude. Right? I think the goal for 2018, as a people, we just need to meet in the middle. We just need to connect.
Just come together.
There are people that on both sides. We all gotta connect.
The number one thing we need to connect about, though, is that black people are people. That's maybe the first thing we should all agree on.
I think that we'll use Trump as an example. I'm going to go into 2018 saying, maybe I don't think he's the best leader, but maybe he is a funny asshole.
Yeah.
Maybe in a different time, he would have been an okay president.
Funny asshole president.
As long as I just need some people on the other side to maybe not have to double down on Trump so much. Maybe at some level say, yeah, okay, maybe that's not a good thing that he did.
Maybe if I admit that Trump is kind of a funny asshole president, they could admit that it was wrong for George Zimmerman to kill Trayvon Martin. Maybe we can we meet in the middle? Can we give and take a little bit on this?
That's what, I think that's the motto of 2018. You need to hear a whole argument out before you pick which side you're on. Because I think a lot of people, when they see that this altercation happened between these two things, you're already naturally on the side of the thing you've trusted before.
Your fucking tweeting fingers get, you fucking salon columnist, your tweeting fingers get all heated up, and your little erogenous tweeting fingers, and you get on your phone, and you just kind of diddle yourself. Where's this going? Can we talk about music?
Let's talk about music.
All right. It's 5 minutes of politics talk is up.
Yeah. So, top 10 albums. How'd you feel about your 10? Did you love your 10? Did you feel like there were some that you needed 10, so you had to pick a couple you didn't love, or did you feel like a bunch got cut off that you did love?
It's a weird 10. I wasn't so much. Once I had my 10, I kind of figured out the order from there. But picking the 10 itself was not that hard for me. Now, granted, I kind of played it fast and loose. They're not all albums, Curtis, all right?
That's fine.
My number 10 is, strictly speaking, one song.
I was, okay, I'm glad we went into that.
Okay, yeah, because you were probably a little...
Today I made an attempt. I unexpectedly didn't have to work today. Mm-hmm. So I made an attempt to listen to every album you had that I had not heard yet. And I saw that one, and I was like, Spotify only had a song.
Yep.
And I was like...
That's all there is.
Yeah. Okay,
he might have another song. Maybe we should just start with me. I should just say what it is.
Sure, go for it.
My number 10 is Boofiness by the artist 1010 Benja SL.
It's real flows off the tongue.
This is SoundCloud rap, man. That's what's going on in here. But it's in opposition to much other SoundCloud rap. It is not loud and bombastic. Rather, it's more subtly layered and harmonized, and the lyrics are ridiculous, just top to bottom. It's just, this song is my happy place, It's uses some lingo I hadn't heard before, crinkle cutted. I don't know that I don't know what that means, but it sounds bad. And yeah, I don't know anything about 1010 Benja SL.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think he has another song out, like I said, but I saw someone in the YouTube comments for this song claiming to be the brother of 1010 Benja SL's girlfriend. It's yeah, he's cool. He's super busy though. He's one of those rap guys that if you put a good song on SoundCloud, someone's going to listen to it and say hey, let me sign you for an album. Because there's this crazy gold rush going on in hip-hop on the internet right now.
I know. And you know what's interesting is Ben and Curt Till It Hurts was almost a SoundCloud project.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. It came down to, I don't remember if it was more expensive or that I found out it did in fact cost money, so I went with what I already knew how to do.
Mm-hmm.
But we should, I fucked up. I'm sorry, Ben. I'm holding this podcast back. If we had started on SoundCloud a year ago, we would have a lot more listeners.
We'd be signed. We'd have a record deal.
Yeah. We'll have to make a YouTube diss track.
Way ahead of you. I'm working on it.
I hope it's about me.
We're going to make YouTube diss tracks about each other.
Yeah.
It's going to be like the monkey's paw. It's like, oh, you made one about my hair, but I cut off my hair to afford to make one about your beard.
All right.
Nothing to diss about your beard, Curtis.
Thank you.
That was just the first. It was literally just the first thing I looked at.
It's probably the most in anyone's face thing when they look at me.
What's your number 10?
My number 10 is Caustic by Primitive Man. I don't know if you're familiar.
I'm not. Tell me about this.
I had not listened to this band before this year, but they are a 3-piece doom metal band, and this album. Jeez, I'm getting all kinds of phones blowing up.
It's just the superintendent again.
I love doom metal,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, at least in my mind, Dope Smoker by Sleep is the doom album.
Are you about to tell me that this album is like Dope Smoker by Sleep?
No.
Because I can't handle that, all right? Because that's also I love that album to pieces.
So you'll at least probably be on board for this.
Okay.
Whenever you listen to a doom metal album, anything that they do, I compare to Dope Smoker.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was trying to sound like Dope Smoker or trying not to sound like Dope Smoker. And this album is probably the farthest away from Dope Smoker on the doom metal spectrum. I think with Dope Smoker and with a lot of doom metal, the goal of the music is to have just these repetitive riffs, but the tone is very like fuzzy and gravelly. The guitars and the bass and even the vocals will just synchronize in this constant state of fuzz that kind of lull you into this trance.
Yeah.
Caustic achieves this trance by like taking a pipe and hitting you on the head with it until you're like numb. That's like I had never known that approach to doom metal in this way.
Mm-hmm.
The album's like 80 minutes long.
Oh, geez.
It's literally a full CD of nonstop, just like harsh vocals and angry guitars and just a fucking relentless pummeling of fucking doom metal. And I can't even listen to it a lot. It just like, it's like, I don't know. There's some movies that are great movies, but you're not going to watch them every day because it's just too much. It's like that. You gotta get yourself into the right mindset to like listen to it, and then when you're done. You're like, yeah, I need a break from that.
I need to put that away where I can't see it for a little while.
That was how I felt, but it made the number 10 spot. There were like 5 or 6 albums that were like a hardcore, really wanted to be number 10, and I went with Caustic because as soon as I listened to it, I thought, this is something special. This is unique. Like, I have never listened to any doom metal quite like this. And I think that even though I can't listen to it all the time, it's a very significant piece of doom metal.
I gotta check that one out.
I'll make you a copy if you want. I'm old school.
Yeah,
I burn CDs.
Hell yeah, I'll take it. I'll listen to it in the car on my way home.
All right. What's your number 9?
Oh, my number 9. Let me look that up. I should have had this open.
That's fine.
I liked another metal album, actually. Paul Bearer. The album Heartless by Paul Bearer.
I'm really glad you had this album on there because it was one that I really wanted to talk about, and I couldn't justify getting it in.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me your thoughts.
I really adore this album. I didn't listen to it for a long time after around when it came out, when I listened to it quite a bit. But I threw the vinyl on again the other day, and like the journey that this album takes you on, the full package, really, like the vinyl comes in this really nice, like fold out, this imagery of like a druidic giant kind of walking through the world, and you get this it comes at you hard with an environmentalist and kind of heavily naturalist and spiritualist theme, and it's the thing that I really like in metal and in extreme music is the variety that you throw in. Like what metal is like, you throw any and all musical genres you can think of into a blender, and then you see kind of what comes out, right? And you kind of taste and note the different notes. And with Pallbearer, like the thing that always strikes me, just because I was such a big King Crimson, not King Crimson. Well, I'm also a big King Crimson fan, but a big King Diamond fan. There's a song on this album that sounds exactly like a King Diamond song, and that's such an impressive. Not that that's an impressive feat, but conceptually, for you to say, like, you know what I want to emulate for this song? Fucking King Diamond. That's what I want for this. And it works. They, like, nail the tone of King Diamond. The appreciation for the history of metal and the wide tapestry of available tones that comes with extreme music. Yeah, I really like this album. What do you think of it? In retrospect, I think we already did actually talk about it around when it came out.
Yeah, this album came out, I think, around April.
Yeah, so I think you actually turned me on to it.
I don't remember.
Maybe not, I don't know.
But it was one of the first great albums that I heard this year. And so at the beginning of the year, there's, you're still waiting for a whole year's worth of music to come out, so it starts off pretty slow. And so I listened to this album a lot because it was all I had for new music. And it's just very, very good. It feels like a soaring adventure. Mm-hmm. I think it slowed down for me as more things came out. I listened to it a little bit less and less. And it's a kind of a double-edged sword when you buy... I don't know if I guess I would consider Pallbearer doom metal, I guess. Kind of, yeah. It's a double-edged sword when you listen to metal albums like that on vinyl, because on one hand, you get like that really nice, warm tone that is kind of fuzzy anyway, that fits really well with that type of metal. But on the other hand, they're long, so they come on double LPs. So you have to take 3 breaks throughout listening to it to flip it over and then grab the second one and put it on, then flip it over. And I think that one of the most important things of a doom album is to be able to sit and close your eyes and listen to the whole thing uninterrupted. That's actually the only reason I haven't bought Dope Smoker on vinyl. It's just because I'm like, I don't think I'll be able to enjoy it as much if I can't listen to the whole thing. So I might enjoy this more if I listen to it digitally.
Yeah.
But I think also, too, I like their previous album more, Foundations of Burden. So that was a great album, but I also was kind of just like, yeah, but if it weren't out this year, I would rather listen to Foundations of Burden. So
yeah.
Kind of held it back a little bit for me.
Reasonable. I should go back and listen to Foundations of Burden. I think I checked it out one time around when Heartless came out, but I never stuck with it really.
What are we at? Is that
this is number 9.
So my number 9 now?
Yeah, what's your number 9?
What Now by Sylvan Esso.
Yeah, you talked about this one a little bit, I think, right?
Yeah, and this album was recommended to me by a friend. Is my first like entry in like the dream pop genre. So I have to admit that I'm not sure if this album is like truly special or if I'm just so new to that sound that maybe it had more of an effect on me than for other people that maybe listen to a lot more dream pop. But what a fantastic album. Just enjoyable the whole way through, the perfect length, and it feels like a dream to listen to it. It kind of fades in on this fuzzy vocalization that takes a minute to find itself before you can understand what they're saying. And it just feels like you're listening to, it's like a dream. Like you fade into it and then it's, really crazy and then you fade back out of it. And the strongest song off of it was Die Young. I don't know if you had heard that song. But it was just a really... I listen to a lot of metal and a lot of hip-hop. Not a lot of room for, like, really nice love ballads. And, like, kind of how I mentioned when we talked about Lil Wayne, a lot of times the quote unquote love songs are like weirdly from a male angle, like written by a man for a man.
Yep.
But that song was really touching, and it was the singer of it's a pop duo. The singer of the group is a woman, and the perspective on that song is about a person who was kind of living in the fast lane and wasn't careful and didn't have much to live for, and then they were going to die young, and now they have to wait for you to die because they found someone to spend their life with. And I was like, that's just a really nice and in the year that happened to be that I got engaged and then married, that was a really nice album to have when I have all those feelings going on.
Yeah, it's important to have like an outlet, have some kind of internal reflection to bounce those feelings off of. Yeah. Have you listened to Y Oak at all?
No.
When you're talking about dream pop, I guess I don't even know if the album Shriek by Y Oak would count as dream pop, but they kind of went from being more of a rock duo on their album Civilian to being straight up like electronic pop on their most, I believe, still most recent, like full length, everything from the ground up album Shriek. And yeah, just that feeling of like fading in, and like you've got all these sounds going on that I don't know if this is the way you listen to it, but I always wonder, how did they make that sound?
Yeah.
Like, what are the component pieces that go into that? And just really an appreciation for every single, like, intentionally layered sound that's going on in a song.
That's something that I really appreciate, because with my background, like, I play guitar and I've always liked metal and punk and rock. So, like, when you're in one of those types of bands, there are 5 people and they each play that one instrument, and so when you hear something, for the most part, you know what it is. You're like, oh well, that's obviously a sweet bass line. But listening to more and more pop, especially in such an electronic age, you will hear these like, oh, I have never heard that noise before, that's interesting. And so I like that.
Yeah. All right, number 7.
Yeah.
Number 8 number 8
Number 8
is the album Drunk by Thundercat. Yeah, Thundercat I think this is probably his best album yet. Thundercat is part of the Brain Feeder hip-hop collective that's out of Los Angeles, associated with Flying Lotus as well, who's one of my favorite artists working today. And Drunk is this like epic of just oddity and weirdness, and just this really bizarre look directly into this guy's brain. All his anxieties, and they're really like low-level anxieties, seemingly low-level anxieties, but in aggregate, you do get a sense, like an understanding of, I don't know how autobiographical this album is, I don't think it really matters, but you get a sense from listening to this album that even a bunch of little things all put together are enough to create like an overwhelming and pressing sense of dread. Maybe dread isn't the right word. I don't know. It's not a dreadful album. It's kind of a funny album, for much of it. And it's delightful.
I listened to it when it first came out, and I maybe should have spent more time on it. I found it enjoyable, but where there was so much new music coming out, sometimes I'll listen to something and be like, yeah, that's good, but I know it's not going to be like in my top 10, so I don't have time to like, I have to keep throwing albums through the wood chipper, as it were.
Yeah,
but I did enjoy it. I think it was very funky. Like
it is funky. Yeah, and speaking kind of like pop music with noises that you wonder how they were made, a lot of that happens.
Yeah.
Thundercat has this really unique way of playing the bass guitar that you can hear it whenever he's on, I think, a couple Kendrick Lamar songs, and you just hear him. Yeah. You can tell, oh, that's Thundercat. He plays it really fast, and he runs up and down the fretboard in unique ways.
I think I watched a video of him performing one of his songs, I want to say on Jimmy Fallon, and some late night show. And it was mixed nicely, so you could very clearly hear his part, and very nice sound, very interesting playing style. That was just as fun to watch as it is to listen to.
He's a fun guy to look at too. Yeah. He seems like a nice dude. Speaking of Brain Feeder, though, I forgot one honorable mention because it's not really music; it's a film maybe I should save this for the fucking 2017 in visual media, but Flying Lotus is as much an audio producer as he is now a director of films. And he made a film called Kuso, which is out exclusively on the Shiver, whatever, Netflix for horror movies.
Oh, yeah.
And it's excellent. Kuso. So I guess I'm specifically giving an honorable mention to the audio track from Kuso. All the weird squelches and body horror sounds that he put together for that movie are just magnificent. But anyway, what's your number 8?
Orc by the OCs. I made an effort this year to expose myself to more like contemporary rock music, because that was one thing that I was painfully missing from my list last year. Is I personally only really listen to like hip hop and death metal, so pretty polarizing genres. And I realized doing my list last year that I don't even know enough rock bands, you know, that would be putting out new music that's really, you know, an essential listening of.
It's like, what is U2 still putting out
Yeah.
music? Does
Like,
Rolling Stone still put fucking whatever U2 album came out this year on their list?
AC/DC put out an album like 3 years ago. And so I listened to that, and that album is very, very interesting. I guess I would call it like garage rock or like acid rock. It's just a very fuzzy, and it sounds like a very minimalist type of music. Like, it sounds like it could have been recorded live in a garage, but then they go places with that sound that you would never expect a band that sounds like that to go. And that album really feels like an odyssey. There's very long periods with no vocalization, so you're just kind of like on this musical ride. And just a very nice, like, surf rocky, acid rock, punky, just a real good, solid rock album.
I'll have to check that out.
That comes from a guy whose favorite rock band is the greatest band in the world. So
AC/DC.
Naturally.
You're talking about Led Zeppelin, of course, right?
I know good rock music. I don't have much else to say about it, but that was that one. What's your number 8?
John Wayne released an album called Rap Album 2. Sort of a very like modern art aesthetic about the whole thing. John Wayne is you listened to this, I believe.
I listened.
Right?
I don't think I ever finished it. I listened to part of it.
John Wayne has a unique lyrical style about him. He is a rapper. He is a white rapper. Yep. Right. Let's get that out of the way up front.
Just be forward about
go
this.
Go ahead. So if you want to turn the podcast off right now, go ahead. John Wayne is a white rapper who I'm not sure if he does his own beats or not. I don't know, but it's a very warm album. It's a very personal album. John Wayne raps a lot about his anxieties and his insecurities and his suffering under the weight of his own increasing fame. And you kind of get the sense at the end of this album that he's not going to make any more albums. But it does have it has some touching moments on it of John Wayne reconciling with himself, reconciling with his own idea of who he wants to be, along with I guess I get the sense that his persona ran away from him a little bit. The persona that he started to adopt when he started to get some attention for the rap music that he was making maybe got a little bit away from him, and the fan base became a little bit too overbearing, and just all these factors all came together and resulted in this real deeply felt and emotionally true album that he came out with called Rap Album 2.
Yeah, I listened to part of it. I kind of have. We're going to talk about this a little bit at some point, whether here or there. I have a weird, when it comes to like conscious hip hop, that subgenre, I don't dislike it, and I really like the lyrical content of it, but I find that a lot of the delivery of conscious hip hop turns me off. It's usually, a lot of times it's very, it's thought driven, obviously, but it's very soft spoken a lot of the times. And I think when I listened to that album, I liked it, but I don't know. I feel like with a lot of the rap I listen to, I need that like tough, aggressive like energy that you spit out on the mic, and it can hinder albums for me that I don't think they should do it any differently, because I think that works well for what it is, and I think he made a great album. It just, as far as my enjoyability and how often I listen to it, a lot of times I need my rap to just have that energy. That conscious hip hop delivers their energy in a different way.
I guess I kind of see what you're saying. Yeah, I kind of see. I never think of it as conscious hip hop. I do my genres a little differently from how you do. I lump it all together into hip hop. It's one big vat, right?
Yep.
But I know what you're saying about the flow. It's not as aggressive. It's not as like boom, 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 boom. At least not most of the time. Like they certainly have their moments. But yeah, it's you're riding along with the rhyme and with the rhythm a little more so than being driven by it, I guess. I don't know quite how to articulate that, but I see what you're saying.
What are we at, number 7?
I think so.
So this album, surprisingly, it was my number 1 biggest disappointment of the year. Still made it in my top 5 because I'm a sellout. And that is The Saga Continues by the Wu-Tang.
An album that you've literally been shitting on for weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. You made charts and graphs about this album.
I did make charts and graphs. No one knows that outside the podcast.
You mentioned it on the podcast, Curtis. I'm pretty sure.
I think I mentioned it after we were done recording. Damn it. No. So anyway, that album was my biggest disappointment of the year. It has its flaws, and it's not the dream Wu-Tang Clan album that I'm still hoping to get. But like, I can't let that take away from the good qualities on that tape. And I listened to that a lot this year. If I ranked my albums just based on what did I listen to the most, it would probably even be up a little bit higher. There's a lot of great things going on, and if I listen to it just on its own without any expectations, I love the album, but just thinking about what it could be does make it a big disappointment for me. But DJ Mathematics does like a fantastic job like recreating that RZA sound with like contemporary abilities. It's just nice to hear them the beats produced and handled with care. It's a guy taking a really, anything he needs is at his fingertips. He's a well-known hip-hop producer making beats for one of the most well-known hip-hop groups. And he does a great job. I think he made beats that is similar to what the RZA's beats would have sounded like when he was making 36 Chambers if RZA had, if he didn't have the same limitations that he had. I was also a big fan of, there were some samples that were sprinkled throughout it about the importance of like family and fatherhood, specifically like within the black community, which, I mean, I don't know anything about the black community. I'm not black. I live in Maine. I know like 3 black people. Like there aren't many black people in Maine, I guess by percentage.
Demographics, everybody.
I am digging myself in a hole here.
It's okay. I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. What does it have to say about fatherhood in the black community?
It uses samples that talk about the importance of fatherhood and staying together with a family and the importance of being there for your family, and in their opinion, how when the example they use is a farmer. When a farm is having trouble, they can go to the government as a family and get subsidized to help make up the difference for their farm not being successful. I don't know any real details about this. This is just off the album. But if a black woman is having troubles and tries to get help from the government, the first question they ask is, is the father there? And if they say the woman will do better if the father is not present. Basically saying that you're rewarded for not. They're in a way trying to drive black families apart by giving more aid to families that are already broken up, which leads to further splitting them up. And I don't know nearly enough about this to say whether I think that that's true or not. I just think that the importance they put on family on this album is really, really good. And I just think
family's the bedrock of society, man.
It really is. And I think that it's important that all families stay together as long as everybody's happy.
Yes.
And I was disappointed by the album because not every member of the Wu-Tang Clan made an appearance, and some only were on there once or twice. But then, like, the guys that did show up are fucking fire. Like, Method Man has some of his best verses he's ever written in his career on this thing. Raekwon shows up and does a fine performance like you can expect of him. And so it's weird because I did have a lot of disappointments in this album, but like overall I listened to it a lot and it's very, very good. I just don't, it hurts to think about, like, it's not my dream Wu-Tang Clan album, but it's still very good.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. My number six
Yep.
is the album Reputation by the artist Taylor Swift.
Okay.
Yep.
This is one that I don't understand that. So what do you like about it? Because this is very interesting to me.
Yeah. I am invested in the Taylor Swift project. I am invested in the story of Taylor Swift moving forward. I think she's a fascinating artist, and I just love to watch all the different twists and turns she takes during her career. I think that Reputation is like the album that you might expect her to make at this point.
Yeah.
She has been going away from her country roots for a while, and it's kind of weird how much her story is still phrased as like country phasing into pop, because it's more like country and pop collided with each other in the late 2000s, and she was just a part of that collision.
Yeah.
But Reputation is now like it's the logical progression from 1989. It takes a lot of the stuff that I liked about 1989 and it takes it in different directions, interesting different directions, like her intentional twisting of her own image, which I would describe as Kanye-esque. Right? I don't think she gets enough credit for how much like Kanye West she is, and how fucking she is as good as Kanye West, if not better, in my opinion.
I don't have a whole lot to say about Kanye, so I think
they're really comparable artists. So you don't have a lot to say about Taylor Swift, and you don't have a lot to say about Kanye.
Yeah. Which
is an interesting pairing, because they are two of the most popular artists in America right now. Their upward trajectories have been tied together by the VMAs thing, right? Yeah. Where Kanye ran on stage, and that was one of the founding moments of modern culture. Like, everyone had a fucking opinion about that. And then it was like, ooh, everyone can have opinions on the internet, and we can all throw them at each other, and whoever says them loudest is right. So that I see that as not the beginning, but as one of the flashpoints at which that modern sense of discourse was born. So you've got that being tied together. They've both taken these crazy twists and turns in their careers, and they're both making albums now that are unconventional, maybe, but are generally quite well liked by people. And yeah, I would say I generally quite well liked Reputation. That's selling it too short. It's on my top 10. It's my number 6. I really loved this album.
You thoroughly enjoyed this album.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved a lot of songs on it, such as Look What You Made Me Do, the number one fucking pop hit of the century. I don't know. That's not true, but I really like that song.
In my head it is.
In my head it is. That's not even true either. It's
T Swift, we know you're listening, and we just want you to know how much Ben appreciates that particular single.
Okay, T Swift, I know you're listening, and I just want you to know that I know all that shit they say about you on 4chan isn't true, okay? You probably did go on 4chan about 10 years ago, but you are not currently a user, and you do not agree with their white supremacist beliefs. Did you know about this, Curtis?
No.
4chan literally thinks they have documents that they've made about how Taylor Swift has been dropping all these hints all over the place about how she actually uses 4chan and she's used 4chan forever, and like she's secretly a white supremacist just like them, Heil, and all that shit. And the depth to which they discuss this is unending. Reliably every month, at sometimes a year, every week. It really depends on how popular Taylor Swift is at the time. The more popular Taylor Swift is, the more often this is going to come up on 4chan. But the thing that sticks out to me, because there is some good evidence that Taylor Swift has been to 4chan several times. Anyway, Taylor Swift probably doesn't still go to 4chan, but I think she did at one point. And what's your number 6 album?
My number 6 album is Grave Bloom by the Acacia Strain. I've talked about this on the podcast. I kind of was cold on it when it first came out, and I think I was the last time we talked about it, I was just starting to come over on it, of this, when you have expectations for a band, when do you just want them to sound like what they sound like? Mm-hmm. And I think I had a hard time coming to terms with that when this first came out. Up to this point, I think there had been a certain amount of evolution between every Acacia Strain album, and this was just more Acacia Strain. And I think it was kind of hard for me to get into, but once I opened myself up to that, I said, they've just embraced this, as people call it, tune low, play slow, like mentality. I was like, okay, like this is what the Acacia Strain is. Like, this is what I like about it. And we're finally getting to a point where the music is reaching this same level of nihilism as the vocals. I think since they replaced their founding guitarist, I think that they have found guys that either are on the same wavelength as the singer or have tuned themselves to the same wavelength as the singer. When you start, they started that band when they were very young. So when you're young, your drummer's the guy that plays drums. Your brother is your guitarist. Like that's literally from my experience. But and after a while, once I said, okay, that's what this album is. It's just nihilistic, straightforward hatred pounding at your ears. I was like, oh, okay, I can get behind this. Like it took a while. It didn't sink any claws into me, but now I'm buddied up with it, and I just highly recommend it. That's about it.
Grave Bloom by the Acacia Strain.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Are we ready to get into the top 5?
Oh, we are so ready for the top 5.
Top 5. My number 5 album of the year is Carrie and Lowell Live by Sufjan Stevens and his Magic Band. Carrie and Lowell is Sufjan Stevens' best album. It's probably the best piece of music in the last 10 years. I don't know. I'm pulling that number out of my head, but it's a towering achievement of songwriting, and it's one of those pieces. It's one of those albums that every time I listen to it, I discover something new. Especially having just had a child like that. I returned to that album quite a bit in the last couple weeks, as I had kind of a tumultuous, time, and discovered completely new aspects of it. And then Carrie and Lowell Live. So Carrie and Lowell came out 2015, I think. Carrie and Lowell Live takes what makes Carrie and Lowell great and translates it to a live environment. I'm not going to say it's as good as Carrie and Lowell, not even close. If I need what Carrie and Lowell has to give, then I need what Carrie and Lowell has. It has this incredible lo-fi energy. It feels like such an intimate album. It feels like Sufjan Stevens is whispering it into your ear for most of the time that you're listening to it. Have you listened to that album?
I listened to the live version. today. I didn't listen to the whole thing, but it's something that I need to finish, and I didn't know if it was a live version of a studio album or if it was like I don't know. I always call them like studio live, like Nighthawks at the Diner, where it's a new material just performed live. But I think that the tone of the album was fantastic. It had these sounds that I think studio albums try to emulate that you can't always emulate. And in a live performance, the ambiance was, you could feel that it felt live, and it just had this sound of it literally echoing into a room with just great, sound quality that I think is often imitated on a studio album, but it sounded like it. I need to listen to both versions because it sounded like it needed to be live to sound as like warm and room filling as it did.
And they made a lot of really smart decisions with the live version of this music because they changed a lot of it to work really well in the live atmosphere.
Yeah.
And did you watch the video or just listen to it? If you feel like going back and finishing it, I would recommend you check out the video version.
Okay.
Because the stage show, the light show that they put together for this concert experience is like is out of this world. It feels like something out of the 70s, man. Like, I mean, I don't even know. It feels like Pink Floyd. Like my ideal of a crazy stage show is like what you hear about Pink Floyd shows back in the day. Or like Nine Inch Nails did a lot of really great stage show work in towards the end of their regular touring. So yeah, Carrie and Lowell live, and it takes you on this incredible emotional roller coaster ride. Not roller coaster ride. That's misrepresenting it a little bit. It takes you on this emotional arc. It's like a story. It takes you on an emotional path, and then on the album, it ends with this just devastating like emptiness. But because that wouldn't really work in a live setting, they end it with a performance of Hotline Bling. I think that's the last track on the live on the concert show. But I think they know that like people don't want to walk out of a concert feeling like they're like they have seen the dark heart at the center of the universe.
Yeah.
Which is how you finish that album feeling, in my opinion, at least. Oh yeah. All right. What's your number 5?
Number 5 is The Blood of Gods by Gwar. This album is one of the most interesting albums of all year. I was looking forward to it all year. Gwar's last album, I believe, came out in 2013, and stylistically, it was a very straightforward sound. It was somewhat of a concept album. The singer of Gwar has always kind of had these like half-baked concepts in his mind that they don't really translate when you listen to the album, but then you'll see interviews where he'll like tell you the story of the album.
Like, oh, okay.
And you're like, oh, okay.
It's like Coheed and Cambria.
I get that. And then, even back in the 90s, Gwar would release like, tapes that were like they would interject scenes in between the music videos that kind of connected them together, so you got the full arc. And they never did that with Battle Maximus, but you had the whole album had this one sound that told a story if you knew what the story was. And then I think in 2014, the singer of Gwar, the last founding member, died of a drug overdose. So after that, you had this whole, like, what's going to happen to Gwar? Are they going to break up? Are they going to try to replace him? He's the last founding member. He's such a unique musician. How can you replace that? And they decided to replace him and carry on. And I think they made, like, the most respectable choices you can make. So I was excited to hear it. They replaced him with the old bass player, who even sang on some songs. So, like, you can listen to old Gwar and hear the singer of new Gwar, which is a pretty...
There's some continuity there.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting idea. And it sounds a lot like an older Gwar album. Like, it was weird enough to have the completely different singer for the first time, but also strange because it sounded more like a 90s Gwar album. It was kind of like a mixed bag of genres and a lot of different, it doesn't have the cohesion of an album that Battle Maximus had. It feels kind of like a grab bag of genres and songs. But overall, I was very pleased with it. It sounds like Gwar. It was done in a very respectable way, and they even address it multiple times on the album, literally even saying that, like, it's not our choice. Like, we, don't be mad Dave's not here. We wish he was. Like, and it was done very nicely. And the new singer adds some interesting elements to the band. He has his vocal range is much wider. So there are a lot of like high notes, and he does a couple different registers when he sings, but it's kind of weird because simultaneously he has a wider range, but you feel like he has less tricks up his sleeve than Brocky had. So it's
Dave Brocky was very much a showman.
Yeah. So I think if he had been able to throw as many curveballs as Dave did, I would have had to rank this album higher. But I just found it to be a very enjoyable album. I saw them in October on the tour that accompanied the album, and it still felt like watching Gwar. It still feels like Gwar. The album still sounds like Gwar. And overall, I just really like it. I think if you wanted to hear a song off of it that I would highly recommend, I would say like Viking Death Machine was a really good song, and Phantom Limb was a really cool metaphor for what it feels like to lose their singer. Kept coming back to it. Came out in October, and it's been on pretty constant replay. Granted, I mean, Gwar and the Acacia Strain are two of my favorite bands, so maybe if you weren't a diehard fan of those bands like me, you would not have put these albums that high in your top 10 ranking, but I had to put them there. Just to the sheer amount that I listened to these albums this year.
Hey, it's not anybody else's top 10.
Yeah,
it's your top 10.
And I'm a little biased, I admit that.
If they don't like it, they can make their own podcast.
So, real quick sidebar to that. Whenever I make lists, and I've been making podcast lists for a while now, I always felt apprehensive about saying the top 10 albums of whatever. I always say mine. Mine's Kurt Cake's top 10, my top 10. And that was because I always felt like I haven't listened to every album that came out this year. Maybe there's some great stuff that, that I missed, or, maybe on paper, or, this album is better than this new Gwar album, but Gwar is one of my favorite bands and I can't help but love it. So it's my top 10. You don't have to defend it if it's your top 10. But now that I'm as invested in top 10 lists and new albums as I am, seeing throughout December all the top album lists come out and seeing what's at the top of some of these lists, I have really just hit this point where I'm like, man, fuck you guys. My opinion is just as fucking valid as anybody else's. You see the amount of, like, it's like when you watch, like, the Grammys, you're like, oh, fuck you, this is a popularity contest. That album is not the best fucking album
this is a
year.
fucking scam.
Yeah, like, you are not being honest with yourself here. Like,
yeah.
So, I feel no guilt about putting these favorites of mine in my top 10.
Yeah, no, fuck them. You shouldn't.
Yeah.
Hey, that Kendrick album's real good. Doesn't need to be the top of everybody's list. Fuck them.
Damn is on the top of so many.
Yeah.
Top album lists in general, he's like number one on every hip-hop list this year.
Yep.
And just, I don't fucking see it, guys.
We'll talk about that in a couple.
We'll talk about it.
Number 4 for me is Tyler, the Creator, Flower Boy.
Yeah.
His new album that he came out with this year. It is by far his most accomplished album yet, and that's coming from someone who has really genuinely enjoyed most of what Tyler, the Creator, has done up to this point. Like, he's always had kind of a manic, misfit, youthful energy about him, but I think he's finally figuring out how to channel that and turn it into something productive rather than like a lot of his older stuff can come across as kind of nihilistic.
Yeah.
And he finally feels like he has a longer term view of what his life is going to look like and what he wants his life to look like, and that he's actually building something. which is insane to say because like he is the creator. He helped build Odd Future. It's just that his music has always been somewhat at odds with his with the business realities of what he has done, which is accomplished an insane amount by an impressively young age. And I forget where I was going with that sentence.
Well, he produces his own beats too, doesn't he?
He produces his own beats. He produces beats for other people. Like that Schoolboy Q album, one of the best beats on that album is a Tyler, the Creator beat. And it's, you can always tell a Tyler, the Creator beat because it never sounds quite like anybody else. And it often never sounds quite like any other Tyler, the Creator beat. So whenever you hear something crazy and unique, you get in your head this sense like, wow, this might be Tyler, or this is someone Tyler-esque. I'm going to take a sip of water real quick. So tell me what you think about Tyler, the Creator.
I keep going back to Tyler, the Creator, and I'm going to kind of flip-flop on this a little bit. I really, really want to like Tyler, the Creator, because I love Tyler, the Creator, the person. Anytime I've ever experienced him on an interview or in a video, he just seems like an amazing artist, and I think he's a great guy. And just when I listen to his albums, it just doesn't have any staying power for me. And like, I like this album. I found it like enjoyable, but like I didn't listen to it much. I listened to it through twice. I think today was one of those times. And it was fine. That's how, and I wish I liked it more than I do. I just keep going back to, it's fine. It's good. And I just really want to like him more. Like, he did a performance on the NPR Tiny Desk concert a few months, and that was beautiful.
It was an excellent performance.
Excellent.
Yeah, he was really stretching for that too. It seemed like you could tell with his nervous energy behind the microphone that like he was trying something new for him, and he mentioned it during the concert as well. Like, he'd never used live instrumentation, and it was a new experience.
The thing that I feel bad about is that I know a lot of people have said this year that this is like his most mature album, his best sounding. It's the best Tyler album he's ever made. And I do have to admit that I listened to this album on Spotify and I said to myself, when the fuck is this album? This feels really fucking long. And it had switched over into playing Goblin for like 4 songs, and I didn't notice. Like,
were you a big Goblin listener back in the day, or
So, but it just, I know that an artist has a sound, and you listen to an artist because you like that sound. But it was hard for me to understand, where I haven't listened to much Tyler, the Creator, upon like checking out each album once or twice. I mean, like, it's fine, not for me. People keep talking about this maturity and best sound so far, and I was a little disappointed that I didn't even notice when it went from one album to a much older album.
I'll say that I think the reason for that might be because let me try to formulate this thought real quick. I think the reason for that might not be because Flower Boy is not a very mature album, as much as it is because people did not give albums like Goblin enough credit for being as mature and multifaceted as they were. Like, say, for instance, the thing I was just thinking about is the first time I gave Tyler, the Creator, attention was when the video for Yonkers came out, which is that crazy black and white video where he like eats the cockroach and like hangs himself at the end or something. It's crazy. And he directed that video as well. I can't wait for him to direct his first feature film someday. It's going to be nuts. So you listen to Yonkers, and it's really intensely dark lyricism and relentlessly bleak. And then I listened to him talking to Sway, I think. Sway in the Morning, just for the audience's benefit, anyone who doesn't know who Sway is. He's a radio guy who talks to a lot of rappers. And he was saying, like, Tyler, the Creator, was saying, Yonkers was like a fucking trash beat that I threw together in like an hour, and it was just supposed to be a parody of like the kind of New York shit, the kind of New York hip hop that me and my friends made fun of. And the rap that I rapped on Yonkers is a parody of New York hip-hop that nobody picked up on. Everyone thought I was just being like really dark and grotesque just for no other reason, but it's actually like a parody of the darkness and grotesqueness of New York hip-hop. And I was just fascinated by that idea because it gets to... Like, we talked a lot about Quentin Tarantino on this podcast, as everyone knows.
Yep.
And I think one of the things that we talked about with Quentin Tarantino is that he's part of this incredible cast of artists that came out in the, like, video store era, where they absorbed everything all at once, and then they were able to push it out into their own art. And rather than being, like, a confused mess, it turned out their art, by virtue of having been... like the result of absorbing the totality of cinema, was often really, really fucking good. I think a similar thing happened with Odd Future and with the generation of rappers around Odd Future, which is that they have all grown up in the age of the internet. When if you want to listen to an album, all you have to do is log on to fucking Napster or like YouTube now, and you can listen to it.
Lest we forget BearShare.
BearShare. Kazaa. Right? Log on to your file sharing network of choice, and you can get whatever album you want and listen to it. So you absorb all of this, and you form opinions about it, and you talk to your friends about it, and then all of you and your friends all get really, really good at rapping, and you start making these songs that are just kind of jokes for your friends, and like jokes for people who are as knowledgeable and as, I think fluent is probably the best word we could come up with it for it, is Tyler, Creator, is fluent in hip-hop. He knows it at a deep down soul level. And he's able to make songs that are jokes that I didn't even pick up on because I didn't know enough about hip hop to be able to pick up on them.
Yeah.
I still liked Yonkers the song, but knowing that in addition to being kind of like a dark, weird song, it's also this like fucking just slapped off parody of New York hip hop. Like Jadakiss, I think, might have been the guy that he was fucking with.
That similarly reminds me, you're a little familiar on some level with Madlib, right? He's kind of like, you're not going to hear any Madlib beats on the radio. He's kind of like a hip hop head, producer, rapper. He produced the song "No Parties in L.A." or something. It's a Kanye song on The Life of Pablo, and kind of similar to the Tyler, Creator thing. He made that beat like on an iPad, just like fucking around. And I think it's so interesting when you have guys that have this deep, deep knowledge of their craft that sometimes when they jokingly dumb themselves down a little bit, and that's what it takes for them to get on a level where people will be like, "Oh man, I like that." Like, "Okay,
I fuck
cool."
with this.
Like, and I mean, I'm no super genius. I'm sure that shit happens to me too. It happens to everybody. But I always think that that's interesting when you have an art, like if an artist didn't have to accommodate their viewers, what kind of things would you see? Or in movies, accommodate their investors. If every artistic director had all the funds to make whatever movie they wanted to, what would we be looking at?
I wonder if it would be worse, maybe. Like maybe those limitations are necessary.
Yeah,
like some artists make their art well in like even Leonardo da Vinci worked for patrons, like you got to make your money, you got to fucking eat your bread, and maybe having those limitations, having that space within which you need to work, makes you a better artist. I don't know. What's your number 4?
That wasn't a quick sidebar. My number 4 is Drop Top Wop by Gucci Mane. Mm-hmm. Man, what a fucking spectacular achievement in music that is.
Yeah.
Gucci Mane's been out of prison for over a year now. Drop Top Wop came out on the 1-year anniversary of being released from federal prison. And it, I think it's like now like the 12th or so thing he's released since being out of prison about a year and a half ago.
Good Lord.
And in my opinion, just by far the best. Just a fantastic, short but not too short, 8-song. I think it has eight or 10 songs on it.
Mm.
Hip hop thing produced by all one producer, Metro Boomin, and it was my go-to CD for like most of this year. It was just constantly.
One of the albums about which we have recorded an entire episode.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to hear more about this album, but I really dug this album.
Yeah, and that's really it. I don't have to pound it into the ground. I mean, like you said, my thoughts are on the previous episode, and they've just stayed so that through the rest of the year, it's chipped away, every other album I've listened to for its quality.
Yeah, and you still have the cover of the next Gucci Mane album as your fucking desktop background.
Yeah, that's actually the second album that was put on the 2018. Anything that comes out in December, I take for consideration.
How was it?
Year. It was not as good as Drop Top WAP. Still very good. It's entirely. There are no features on the entire thing, so it's just straight uncut Gucci Mane, which is cool and interesting in some ways, and a little. I always like a good feature too. 2 Chainz, as you mentioned, has one of the best features on the whole album, Drop Top WAP.
Yep.
It's nice.
My God, Gucci Mane's. What's that line I always return to? The like. Give my cousin some Adderall. Tell my cousin some Adderall because he's taking his finals.
Yeah.
That whole 2 Chainz verse is a real highlight of my year.
Yeah, that was great. But yeah, I love that album. It stayed awesome.
Yeah. Well, going back to up to number 3 now. All right. Going back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, it's Kendrick Lamar's new album, Damn. It's and as we said, this is a lot of people's number 1.
Yeah, left and right.
Yeah, and I think there are good reasons and bad reasons why it's people's number 1. I think that Kendrick Lamar is an artist who's working with such like a broad range of artistic possibility right now that you just jump at the opportunity to see whatever he's going to do next, because he's taking. The way I saw someone say it is like it's an incredible statement by an artist who has nothing left to prove but his staying power. Yeah. It's like that's all he's already proven. As far as I'm concerned, with To Pimp a Butterfly, he proved that he was one of the most important rappers of all time. Mm-hmm. And ever since then, it's just like, what's he gonna do next? Yeah. Like, how the fuck is he gonna continue this career of just like unexpected left turns and getting more personal and like the conviction with which he is furthering his own artistic project is monumental.
My theory for why Damn is so high ranked is that I had not heard of Kendrick until To Pimp a Butterfly came out, and I think that To Pimp a Butterfly was what broke him through on the mainstream, and I think publications in 2017 are saying, we're sorry we didn't recognize Good Kid, Mad City, and To Pimp a Butterfly as the masterpieces they are. We are sorry we didn't notice in time. We're going to give it to you with Damn, even though Damn does not hold up as those 2 albums do.
I think Damn is really, really great on its own, too, though. I really do. I really, really love some songs on that album.
One of my favorite like memes from this year was the Needle Drop gave it a 7 out of 10, and the world was fucking enraged.
Yeah,
but honestly, like I saw that and I was like, yeah, okay, like
yeah, I can buy a 7 out of 10. Yeah, I can.
I saw the number before I listened to the review and I was like, yeah, okay, right. That's probably what I would give it. Yeah, good album.
Yeah,
like, yeah, and yeah. I thought it was good. There are some songs that I enjoyed a lot off of it. I didn't feel that it had the same. It's not as much of a strong concept as his previous 2 albums. And then there was the whole, all the stupid shit that's kind of come out with it, like Kendrick saying that it's kind of meant to be listened to backwards.
Oh, yeah.
And then they literally released a collector's edition on iTunes that is the same tracks in reverse for sale for $10 again. And at that point, that album had no chance. I was like, fuck that. Like, you can't make... You're living in fucking 2017. You can't make a fucking playlist. You're going to fucking put it up again for $10 more. I think at that point, I had kind of just written it off. But I think it's good. I found it enjoyable.
I love DNA. I love Humble.
Humble's great.
Yeah, I love...
The video for Humble, too, was like...
The video for Humble is nuts.
I can't remember it now. There was a line in Humble that I was just like, whew, thank you, Kendrick. Thank you for saying that. I don't remember what it was, though. Great podcasting, Curt.
I think I remember what line it was. You want me to give my guess?
Give me the guess.
It's the Photoshop.
Yeah, that's
I'm
the
so
one.
fucking sick and tired of the Photoshop. Show me something natural like Afro and Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
Show me something natural like ass with some stretch marks.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was into that.
I remember when we talked about that. Yeah. Yeah, man. Triple X, XXX, also a very good song with a understated U2 feature on it. Yeah, and Fear is a great song as well. Going through the like 7-year-old Kendrick's world, 17-year-old Kendrick's world, and 27-year-old Kendrick's world is a great concept for a song. Like a concept that is strong enough that it probably could have carried an entire album, but instead it's just confined to this one 7-minute and change long song. And the progression of it, you kind of understand a facet of Kendrick's life in an intimate way.
Yeah.
What's your number 3?
Forced Witness by Alex Cameron. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast or not.
I don't think you have.
I've mentioned it to you a little bit. Easily, not even this year, just easily one of my favorite albums I've ever listened to. It's Alex Cameron is a singer-songwriter that uses this kind of 80s sound. I would describe the album as kind of like an 80s rock pop band, and it's kind of like a character piece about this just like bruised ego, damaged, like shitty tough guy that has all the songs are about love, but they're this like pathetic, like desperate types of love, like falling in love with girls on the internet and falling in love with strippers and just, you know, like meeting up with a girl and hoping she's 17 years old and just stuff like that, you know, sneaking out of bed at night with your girlfriend so you can, you know, look at these naked girls on the internet and stuff. And he just plays this like sad loser with this really high opinion of himself that kind of gets you on his side. And the final track on the album is called Politics of Love. And it just has this great like message of, you know, hey, people love whatever they love. There's no politics in love. There's no rules. You love what you love, and it doesn't matter. And you listen to it, and you're like, yeah, you know, this is a great song. And then you're like, but it does fucking matter.
It actually
like,
does matter. You're a scumbag.
He like kind of pulls you over on
there
his
is right
side.
and wrong. Yeah.
And then you have to like face that. Like, no, this dude is a shitty dude. Like,
yeah.
And I the hooks on the whole album are just like the catchiest.
You played me a couple songs, and I went and listened to some other ones. It's really good stuff.
It's one of my favorite albums that I've listened to in such a long time. Very glad that if only for this album and Orc, my decision to explore rock this year was well worth it.
Yeah, it bore some fruit, it sounds like.
Yeah. I can't wait to see what he does next, because where it's this like character piece and he's a singer-songwriter, his next album could very well have a completely different sound or a completely different topic. Very intrigued to see what Alex Cameron does next, but this was one of my... I feel like my number 2 and number 1 are, I would say I like better than Forced Witness, but I think if like your average person would probably find Forced Witness more enjoyable than my number 2 and number 1. If you had to pick one album to walk away and listen to after this, I would have a hard time I can't say positively that my favorite album from this year is the number one album you should listen to. I almost think Forced Witness is the one you should check out.
Yeah. A phrase you used just now got me thinking about something we were talking about earlier. A fucking loser who thinks he's great at everything, who somehow gets you on his side. Who else does that sound like to you? Because to me it sounds like our current president, Donald Trump. A loser who thinks he's fucking good at everything, but is secretly good at nothing. He's comedic gold, but only because of how deluded he is, right? And we're just all watching him go down in flames.
We're going full political.
Yeah, Donald Trump is imploding. I'm willing to say it.
Here's my one piece about old D. Trump.
The old DTs. America's got the DTs, guys.
Has nothing to do with DT himself. From my perspective, I think the 2016 election was not the best election. Like, I can see why people would vote for either candidate. Mm-hmm. I did not vote for Donald Trump. I did not love my other choices. Mm-hmm. And I can see the appeal of Donald Trump to some people. And I will say once again that I did not love my choice. But since Donald Trump won the election, we as a people, we do not have to double down. That is something that I see so much, where it seems like people can't objectively see, not even that he's a bad president, but that he does things that aren't okay. Like, just because you voted for him doesn't mean that you have to think he's perfect, or that you can't regret that choice in any way. And I think that's my thing about Donald Trump. I hope in 2018, me personally, old Curt Cake, is not going to rub it in your face or be pissed at you if you say, you know what, maybe if I had to vote again, I would not vote the way I voted. Mm-hmm. That's really all. Just please think about the things that he does in the following year. Please think about with an open mind. Don't just say, well, he did this, so I have to find a way for it to be awesome. Yeah. And I will promise not to take the things he does and find a way for it to be the worst thing he could have done, which is why I had to get off of the politics subreddit, because that is a horrid political vacuum of, what did he do today? How can we spin this to make it seem like he caused the next stage of the apocalypse? That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah.
What's your number 3 or your number 2? Are you at 2 or 3?
I'm at number 2.
Number 2.
I'm at number 2. I'm forging ahead into the future numbers.
Yes.
My number 2 is the album Brick Body Kids Still Daydream by the artist Open Mike Eagle.
Yeah.
This is an album that my wife turned me on to, by an artist who my wife turned me on to. And it's unlike any other hip-hop album I've ever heard. Speaking of, like, I think you may have been talking about this when you were talking about conscious hip-hop and about your troubles with getting into the delivery of it. And that is one of the things that characterizes this album, is that Open Mike Eagle, he goes in a couple different modes of vocals, but it's always pretty chill overall, with the exception of 2 songs. Brick Body Complex and
that's what I was just gonna say. I was like, he gets there,
he gets there, yeah, but he saves it for the moments when it really matters, because the rest of the album isn't about that. The rest of the album isn't about righteous rage. The album, for a little background, Open Mike Eagle grew up in this particular, I forget the name of it, but it was a particular housing project in Chicago where a lot of poor black people lived. And about 10 years ago, I believe, they tore it down. So this album is his reflection upon his childhood growing up in this place that has ceased to exist. Not through any natural means, but solely because, like, the white bureaucracy decided it didn't need to exist anymore. Or someone fucking said, like, you know what? I think this housing project is bad for the city. I'm going to tear it down, or whatever happened. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know the specifics of that situation, but either way, the point is that the album is by turns a beautiful and heartfelt reflection, a nostalgic reflection even, of growing up in this place that many people would think would have been a terrible place to grow up, but like it turns he still had a childhood.
Yeah.
You know, even if he was surrounded by things that we were not surrounded by in our fucking cushy, you know, white lives, he had this childhood, and it was a valuable experience. It turned him into the man he is now, which is, from what I can tell, a very good man, right? Yeah. And reflecting on the experiences that he had that formed him into the person he is today. And also, so that's one side of the album. The other side of the album is like a painful cry about how unjust it is that black spaces are not valued as highly as white spaces, because we begin to identify with the spaces in which we live, right? One of his recurring themes throughout the album is a theme of identification with the physical building in which he lived. The album cover is a depiction of buildings, like housing projects buildings, with heads and arms coming out of them.
Yeah.
It's a really striking visual, and it fits so perfectly with the themes of the album as well. So, you know, you try to... He does a great job of communicating an experience that I have not had in any sense of the word, but you take it, it's art, so you take it, and it's universal enough that you feel it, you know? And it made me feel things that I had never felt before.
Yeah. I think that this album is very important. I would put this, for me personally, on a level with To Pimp a Butterfly.
I agree. I actually made that comparison earlier. Yeah.
And for me, even though I don't get into what I would call conscious hip-hop as much because of the delivery, not only were there a few tracks that he kind of gets that energy that I look for, but I relate to this album because I am not I'm not black.
But you grew up much less well off than I did.
I grew up in a very poor neighborhood, and when I listen to this album, I am reminded of my hometown, because the town that I grew up in had these places that were landmarks. They're diners and gas stations and video rental stores, and there was a strip mall with a movie theater that only cost $3 to get in. It was cheap. And as I grew up, these businesses closed. You know, a standalone diner was demolished, and there was many of the businesses on Main Street of my town closed. You could walk down an entire Main Street, and there, when I was a kid, there were stores like I said, there was a diner, you know, a hardware store, a thrift store, you know, a used bookstore. There were those types of places, and one by one, they closed down. You could go down all of Main Street, and there were about 4 or 5 stores that were still open. I was never good at skateboarding, but when I was in middle school, I was part of the kids that were skateboarders. So I skateboarded in the lots of these empty buildings, and I spent a lot of time hanging out in these empty spaces. And as I got older, I started to see things come into this town that were foreign to me. A vegan cafe opened, and
a fucking terrible vegan cafe, by the way. Sorry for anyone who can put that together. I'm so sorry, but
you know, and like a real granola coffee shop,
a very good granola coffee shop
opened.
Too. Yeah,
and when they first opened, you kind of have these like, what the fuck is that place? That looks different, because I was never used to anything like that. Yeah. And then they were too expensive for me to go to, and fucking weird. And I was like, yeah, good luck having a vegan cafe on Main Street in Norway.
Yeah. Oh shit, fucking they're gonna firebomb Norway now, dude.
But then it worked.
Yeah.
And
fucking art galleries started showing
art
up.
galleries started opening up. Now, when I walk down Main Street in the town of Norway, it doesn't feel like my home. It's edible Main Street. There are public gardens where you can plant crops and anybody can take things that have grown in this public garden. There are parking lots that are designed to charge electric vehicles. Those that the vegan cafe is still open.
Still sucks, but it's still there.
The convenience store had to be renovated to be able to keep up. The video store attached to it closed.
Yeah.
There are like bakeries and massage parlors and like aromatherapy places. Just all these places that could never have existed when I was a kid. I know I'm going off on a huge fucking
No, this is great, dude. This is fucking gold. This is like the peak of the podcast.
My hometown doesn't feel like my home anymore. And my mother still lives in that town in the same building. And the building she lives in has just gotten worse and worse and worse. I don't even like going there anymore.
Because the town isn't for people like that anymore. That's a hard...
That's what it is.
It's a hard reality of capitalism.
I mean, I have nothing against any of the people that moved into Norway. I just think on some level I have to recognize that it's unfortunate that this town was a thriving town decades ago, and then it got worse and worse and worse. And then some people from away, if you're a Maina, I fucking hate that I said that, by the way.
A Maina. Your face changed when you did it, too. You clearly hurt yourself.
They moved in. They bought property because it was cheap. They flipped some houses, raised some property values a little bit, started to put businesses in that reflected the people that moved in to these houses that have been renovated. And now my peers, there are less places for my people to live in that town now. And how can you be mad? The town looks great. There, it's a nice place. It looks nice now. It's not an abandoned fucking Main Street that kids can break into the buildings from behind. And I had a fucking hangout in an abandoned fucking skateboarding store.
Sounds
like,
chill.
There are fucking dope-ass pictures of it. We kept a small TV and a Super Nintendo hidden in an old oven so we could fucking take it out and play.
There was electricity to play
it was the basement of a building, so the whole building still had electricity.
Oh my god!
And my friend lived in an apartment in the building, so you could get, if you had access to the inside of the building, you could go in the basement and get access to the back end of that storefront and hang out in there.
Wow!
And so this album on that level really speaks to me. Because I can relate to that. I know what it's like to have this place you grew up still be there, but also be gone.
Yeah.
So I loved that album. I don't know how much I would listen to it, or I couldn't put it above the 10 albums that I chose. But that album was like, it was pretty fucking heavy. Like,
yeah,
to be able to
sounds
listen
like
to
it gave you quite the experience. It gave you a lot to reflect on.
Yeah.
Well, that was incredible. Thank you for that, Chris.
Thank you for listening, Ben.
Then thank you, listeners, for listening as well.
Thanks, everybody. This is going to be a 3-hour podcast now.
It's good. It's good. I'm ready.
Hopefully, my listeners from Norway don't think I'm some sellout.
Curtis using his childhood as fodder.
You know, the weird thing about it too is I was thinking about it today when I was re-listening to this album and thinking about it. There are a handful of like those towny kids that I was never really great friends with them, but they were town kids, so I knew them.
Yeah.
We'd all meet up and skateboard and, oh, hey, there's them. There are a handful of them that are dead now.
Yeah.
Like, Oxford Hills has had a not so good time
with the opioids.
With the heroin.
Yeah.
And so that was really like, you know, some of these people are literally dead now.
Yeah,
and
the people that this album makes you think of, their equivalents for like...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a tough listen. And I think that this album is fantastic on its own. But for that, really was like, whew, man.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like to be poor and black, but I know what it's like to be poor.
and really, like, I might get in a heap of shit for this, but I think that the black-white divide is mostly foisted upon us. And I think that the real divide is probably between rich and poor right now.
I think
and
that...
if you as a person who grew up poor, you understand something essential about this album that maybe some other black people wouldn't understand because they didn't have that experience. This album is more about growing up unvalued, which like what other is that? Maybe a synonym for poor. You're poor. Society does not give you much value because we've decided that the worth of a person is fucking tied to their monetary wealth.
Yeah. I think that if you are a poor black person, you definitely have problems that I have never experienced. Mm-hmm. But being poor, we probably have shared some experiences that you might not know.
You'd find a lot to talk about.
We've experienced.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the greatest tricks that's been pulled on us by the fucking rich people, right? Is the fact that poor white people and poor black people don't know how to get along, despite the fact that they probably have a lot in common. Yeah. Just in terms of like daily lived experience, a lot more in common than they have not in common.
Yeah.
I don't know. I might be talking out my ass with that, but that's my socio-political commentary for the 15-minute period.
What is that your number 2?
That was my number 2. What's your number 2?
My number 2 is Blue Chip 7000 by Action Bronson. It was a serious contender for my album of the year. I downloaded it when it came out. It came out digitally. And then it just, like, last week came out physically. Kind of pissed because I was like, I already fucking paid for this, and now I'm buying it on CD because I'm an asshole. But it looks sick. Just a fantastic album. When I listen to a hip hop album, this is what I want to listen to. Dead End Hip Hop did a review of it, and I love the phrasing they used, and I'm going to steal it because they perfectly described why it's great. It's beats and bars. Mm-hmm. It just has great beats on it and great rhymes. I was digging through the internet to try to find like an instrumental version because the beats are so high quality that I would just listen to the beats. And I was amazed when I found out that it wasn't like one person that did it because the album is so cohesive and flows so well. I was sure that it had to have been like a collaboration, but really I think there were 4 producers on the album. Wow. Each produced about 3 songs on it. Mm-hmm. Just killer. Action Bronson, I think, is a great rapper. Right up kind of in my category of talking about, food and just living the lavish life, which everyone likes to fantasize about. So it's like that's right up there for me. Just some of his best work, especially Action Bronson's whole thing has been kind of like he released some great mixtapes that were very promising for an artist, and everybody was waiting for his debut album to come out, and it came out, and it was Mr. Wonderful, and was generally a big letdown. Mm-hmm. There were a few good songs on it, but most people felt that it was not up to par with his previous material. So he just took that came out in 2015. So he took a couple years and just kind of like got famous for other things. Like he's on the internet, he has like multiple cooking videos, and he made a cooking cookbook. And he like gets high and watches Ancient Aliens and provides like commentary. Uh-huh. But so when this came out, I heard the first single and I was like, this sounds awesome. I really hope the rest of the album is as good as this. And from front to back, there's maybe like 1 or 2 songs on the whole thing that are like good but passable. Yeah. And the rest of them are just incredible. Fantastic.
I gotta check that one out. That's one I didn't dip into. I'm familiar with Action Bronson from other things, and I generally do like him. Yeah. But, yeah.
Yeah. So, number 1.
Faithful listeners of the podcast will note that there is a prominent album from this year in my life that is missing. It's Big Fish Theory by Vince Staples.
Yeah. I have to admit that I felt Vince Staples was almost number 10. He was one of the 5 that was like...
That makes me feel good to hear.
And I didn't make it the number 10 because I knew you would have it on your list, so I would get to talk about it anyway.
Yeah. Yep. That's the kind of strategizing that you got to do with your number 10 spot. I understand.
Tell me what you liked about it.
Man, this was an album that I beat it into the ground around when it came out, and then kept listening to it like every month. I would go back in. And I guess like the Action Bronson thing. Well, okay, my top two go really well together this year, I think, because the Open Mike Eagle album is like they're both. I think you could describe them both as being as relatively conscious, right? They're both politically minded, certainly. But Open Mike Eagle is quite chill, quite laid back, and like sneaks up on you a little bit. Whereas Vince Staples has decided he doesn't want to really compete with anybody else in hip hop, so he's just going to make fucking party music, right? Political party music, with the occasional like experimental dig down into the depths of the psyche of like yeah right, which is a really challenging song to listen to, right? It's hostile to the ear holes. Great Kendrick verse on that song too. As I was listening to it again last night, it just struck me again how wonderful that song is. But yeah, this album, a little similar to the one I was talking about before, the John Wayne album, tracks Vince Staples' rise to greater and greater fame. Again, I hate to like keep qualifying everything I say about a rapper, but I don't know how much this is autobiographical. I assume the answer is some, like a little different for different songs probably. But the artist Vince Staples on the album is talking a lot about how insecure he feels about his fame, but also how he seems to be reacting to that by doubling down with his braggadocio, but then how that doubling down causes the inevitable fall back into like the depths of depression, back down into the pit, causes it to be 10 times worse because he doubled down. And then like he reacts to that, the depths of the pit by like, there's a lot of talk about women in cars on this album. Yeah. I think it's the last song. His description of reading or like not quite being able to remember what issue of a fashion magazine he saw this woman in, 2-page spread in the CR. I think it was for Wang. Can't remember spring or fall. Read it on the plane. Long flights playing on my brain. Like you get the sense of just his whole life being like a fever dream that he's like floating through. Yeah. I don't think that is true for the actual Vince Staples, but I think that it is meaningful that he has made it true for the character, for the persona of Vince Staples that he puts onto the album. It's also, well, his last album, his last full-length LP before this was Summertime '06. Yep. Which was, I think, an album that's going to show reverberations in hip-hop. Like, it gets mentioned on Tyler, the Creator's new album in that A$AP Rocky verse on the single. That album was very much about characters and then like an omniscient narrator being the voice of the chorus, right, saying what the album is about. Prima Donna, he started to develop this persona, this character that he would play, and then on Big Fish Theory, I feel like he's taken this character, which is elements of himself heightened to be more entertaining to listen to. He's taken it in these crazy directions. I just love it.
It's very, very good. I just love Vince Staples. He's
such a good guy. He's such a cool dude.
Vince,
you out there? You listening?
Vince, I know you're listening, and I just want you to say. I just want to say to you.
I just want to put words in your mouth.
I just want you to know that age shouldn't matter, but I do want to say he's younger than us. Yep. But I look up to him because he just feels like he's sitting. He feels like no other rapper that I listen to. He just feels like he's sitting on the outside, looking at hip hop and just reflecting it, and he almost doesn't feel like part of this, like of hip hop, but I mean, obviously he is. I wouldn't take that away from him, but he just feels like he knows what he's doing, and I've seen interviews with him, and he just kills it. He seems so authentic in his interviews.
Very mature.
Yeah,
which might be a patronizing thing to say, in which case I apologize, Vince. I'm saying it because you're younger than me, and I'm impressed that someone younger than me, like Vince Staples, I don't mean like he's surprisingly mature. I mean like he's so mature he actually changed me. Like the things that he has said and done in the last couple of years have changed the way I look at the world and like the way I compose myself in the world, which is not something that I can say for a lot of other artists necessarily, at least not to the extent that he has.
For me, a lot of the reviews that I've seen have put Big Fish Theory in like the top 5 albums for the year, and a lot of it mentions Odd Future, and they're just kind of like pounding in like you need to be familiar with Vince Staples and Tyler the Creator. If you like hip hop, you need to listen to Big Fish Theory. And I just think it came out as such an incredible album, even as far as like instrumentally. He has this just like nihilistic sound that is paired so well with these kind of like bare but playful electronic noises that just he just really has an ear for his beats that just make a great album, and everything he does so far has just been, everything he puts out has been better than the thing before it. It makes me wonder, like, you know, where's he gonna go from here? What is it gonna pan out? Is he gonna keep going further? But just a fantastic album. I love the whole thing.
Yeah. All right, what's your number 1?
My number 1 would have
number
to be
1.
fucking Steven Larson.
Game trailers.
Run the Jewels 3.
Oh yeah,
by Run the Jewels. That should not be a surprise to anyone. I've been like highly praising this album for over a year. It came out. It was supposed to come out mid-January of this year. Killer Mike and LP leaked it, I guess is the best word, knowingly leaked it on Christmas of last year.
Yeah.
So it's technically like a 2016 release, but I don't care.
Whatever. Yeah, I put it on my list last year. You put it on your list this year. We're fine.
And I loved this album as soon as it came out, but like I also know that sometimes you can like something a lot when it comes out and it gets stale, or sometimes you can listen to something and you're like, yeah, it's fine, but then it really grows on you. And every couple months I would just go back to this and be like, no, it's still good. It's still like holding up and chipping away albums that I also love from this year. Just like time and time again, it just keeps holding its own. And I think it's one of the most like multifaceted hip hop albums I've ever heard. I think it, you know, when people talk about how like light works, like whether it works in particles or waves, and you're like kind of both. Like
it's definitely both.
It depends how you look at it, and there's no real clear answer for it. That's what I think of when I look at this album, because you can, when you break it down, it just, no matter how you look at this album, it fucking works. Like it's just broken up into these like palatable chunks of like the first 5 songs are just like banger after banger after banger, and there's kind of this like moody, dark middle part of the album, and then they end on like a very politically driven end where they talk about, you know, death and the future of our country, and they really cover all their ground on this, and they do it in a way that flows nicely and it never feels choppy. It's just fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, Run the Jewels has been a fascinating act to watch the last couple of years, right? Because they kind of came out of nowhere, right? Well, you had like the early rumblings with LP doing the production on Killer Mike's album. Yeah. And then you had RTJ1, which was like, this is a weird thing for free, right?
Yeah.
And then RTJ2 was like, this is much weirder, or not much weirder, but this is a new thing from these guys. Yeah. And what are they going to do next? And then RTJ3 comes out, and you just get blown away. And really the fact that LP produces those beats is really, it brings it to that next level, because it's just, the whole album is made by these two guys, and it manages to like toe the line just between like colorful gangster rap and like
socially conscious hip hop. That it's just it's fantastic. And I mean, we talked about, you know, a little political stuff this year, and this might be a little, I don't know, this might be a little embarrassing to admit, but I like you guys. This album came out shortly after Donald Trump had been elected president. And maybe now, looking back, it's silly to say it, but like, for me, there was a certain amount of worry that came along with that, because I, at the time, completely felt like the United States was at a fork in the road, and which these presidential choices were, which path do we want to go down? And Donald Trump was not the path that I thought this country should go down.
Yeah.
And things have leveled out. That was a pretty intense election. That was a pretty nasty election. I'm not, looking back, I wasn't super happy with either choice.
Yeah.
But I think that this album kind of like addressed those concerns of mine and really just stayed with me through the whole year. Yeah, I think that it just, aside from being a great, you know, it's great overall. Each individual song is great. It has this 2017 blanket that it really just kind of sums up how I felt a lot about life in the past year. And
They were prophetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that it really, if you were, like, sure, it's nice to hear about, like, what you think the best album of this year was, but in 5 years, when you look back and you want to know what was the best album of 2017, this is a great album to look back on, because it really captures the climate of what a lot of people were thinking at the time, for me anyway.
Yeah.
And I just think it was fantastic. It balanced in every way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's mine.
We've been John for a long time here.
Holy cow, we have.
Yeah. Where are we at?
2 hours.
Oh, that's not too long.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
We've done worse. Well,
all right. That was 2017.
That was 2017 in music.
Overall, very enjoyable year in music, I would say.
Yeah.
I had a lot of good times.
Me too. A very delicate balance of, like, my favorite musicians putting out music and musicians I was not aware of putting out some of their best music. So it really was a nice, my list felt like a nice balance of, like, things I knew I was going to love and things that I'm so happy I found.
Yeah. And talking about it all here has me really excited for 2018.
2018.
The current year that we live in.
Yeah. Right now I have a top 2 list of 2018 albums. I'll save it. No spoilers for next year.
No spoilers.
So, what do we have to do from here? We just wrap it up?
I think we just wrap it up.
We just say goodbye.
Yeah. What are we talking about next week?
I don't know.
Do we want to do our 2017 in visual media?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's plan on that. Now, as a caveat, this is not all things that came out in 2017. It is all that we looked at in 2017.
Yeah, just how we interpreted our year through media.
Yeah. Yeah, like what we experienced.
Yeah, so we'll do that next time. So no homework again. You guys are getting off easy.
Think about things you like. That's your homework.
Yeah.
Think about things you like and say a nice thing to a person about whom you might not have much nice to say.
Also, go, just as a recommendation, maybe we'll talk about this at some point, but I was a big fan of Dave Chappelle's new stand-ups on Netflix. He released 2 last week, and I think if we that's the mindset that I think I want to approach 2018 with. So.
Okay. With the mindset communicated in those stand-ups?
I think so.
All right.
So
all right, I should check those out. Figure out where you're coming from.
We'll be back next week, as usual.
Yeah.
If you want to subscribe to Black Gold Podcast on iTunes or Stitcher, that'd be cool. That's the best way to listen to Ben and Curt Till It Hurts and Black Gold Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram and Snups and whatever at CurtCake5K. You can follow Ben and Curt Till It Hurts at Ben_Curt_ what is it?
Ben__Curt and. No, it's Ben_and_Curt?
Yes, that's
okay,
it.
that's the one.
On Twitter. And you can watch our show on YouTube as well.
Yes.
So, with that said, we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for checking it out. I feel weird now that I've been working on this list for a year. It's weird to finally be done with it.
Now you can burn it.
I
You
never
can
have
burn
to
the
listen to
whole
these
laptop
fucking
that's
albums
on.
ever again.
Oh my god, I've been trapped under the yoke of RTJ3 for a whole
Listen
year.
to some motherfucking MF Doom for a couple weeks. All right, we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.